I threw up the live stream to test it out. Jeremy's ESO.
What?
I said I threw up my live stream to test it out to see how it's gonna look. I'm streaming on YouTube if you want to check and see how it looks.
Yeah, I'll look. Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah? Excellent.
going to bed.
You going to bed? Alright, bro.
Yeah. Catch you
man.
next time.
Hey, dude. You know, I'm sitting here typing, and I could just be talking. But yeah, I got my old computer fixed and got a new-ish card, so the stream quality should be a lot better than what it used to be. Oh yeah, how's the microphone, by the way? I want to make sure I set that up right. For some reason, Streamlabs didn't import a lot of my settings from my old stuff, so gotta figure out what's up with that. I saw the base building stuff coming in Star Citizen. I'm surprised they bumped it up so fast. I thought they said during CitizenCon that was going to be toward the end of this year. But I could be mistaken. I guess I could make it a tad louder, sure. That should do it. That's a tad. Right now I'm leveling up my, more! He says, more, he says. Come on, man. Should be good. Gotta get some Kylo Ren gifts going up in here. You guys. How about that? I'll take that as good. Alright, we'll go with that. Maybe the noise gate's making it a little bit difficult, but anyways, it's fixed. A fix. Actually, you know what? I'll stop casting this for a second and actually cast some different kind of magic. Yes, I shall. I'll even make water spring from water. Behold! And now I shall freeze it. Or not. There we go. It won't let me do it ×2. It, like, basically, it'll only let me put one spell down at a time. It won't let me, like, put multiple copies of that spell down. But basically, elementalism works in combos, so, you know, basically you would get your opponent drenched or soaking wet, and then you can freeze them or shock them with lightning, like this. I mean, honestly, it has a lot of development. How should I word this? It's akin to Star Citizen in its development cycle. It's just that in this game, there's actually more gameplay loops to do, and there's actually more meaningful persistence. It's just that, you know, like you said, the setting is, you know, fantasy and it's not sci-fi and in space. So, I mean, yeah, I get that. But it's full loop PvP. Basically, it's itemized PvP. So, basically what you can equip is basically how, air quote, powerful you are on top of your skill. So... yeah, basically what Ziso's saying. First person only. You know, mounted archer seems to be like the meta way to go. But if you put the time into actually doing elementalism magic, which is what I'm doing right now, you become really powerful. Like, the spells I'm doing right now are just, like, where I'm at in the tree leveling up. But there's so many more spells I can be using. And it's like that for each little school within elementalism has all these different variants of spell you can do. So, you know, these will be, you can lay these in the ground kind of like AoE, and this is more kind of AoE stuff, and then your propulsion and aggregation is your damage, I guess you could say. The bottom three haven't been unlocked, which kind of brings me back into my take on the game. You know, Starvault, just like CIG, you know, wants to sit here and pretend they're running a live service without having a complete game, right? And the problem with, you know, Mortal Online 2 is that it's got an active, very active, interested player base, but there's only one continent, right? And there's, you know... and it's not so much limited space, but it is, like, all the parts of the map are connected by server nodes, if you will. So, like, if you were to draw everything into a square, right, it's all stitched together in squares. And every time you go through one of these squares, it's a server node, right? So, basically, that's how that works. But in the grander scheme of things, you know, one continent, one star system, that's how it kind of That's what the correlation comes in, right? And just like with, Star Citizen, this game has gone through, a couple of iterations of combat, and they're actually reworking melee. I think, is it the second or the third time, Ziso, that they're reworking melee in this game? But basically, you have all these different, you have a skill pool you can pull from, and you can put those into basically what you're doing. And there's a min-max meta you can do. Oh, it is the third time? Okay. So, just like in SC, right? You have positional fighting. And, depending on your position, right, is going to determine, basically your edge in a fight. So, and based on your position, whether it's good or bad, is the less your ping is affected. But in the 1v1 situation, when, like, you're fighting somebody from the home server region, which is Norway, by the way, it's basically fighting somebody from the future, right? And everyone else, like NA players in particular, have a really hard time competing with Euro players because of the ping difference. Yeah, it has a lot of similarities, right? So, but, again, it depends on how you look at it, but, the TLDR is that, you got two games that are not complete, two companies pretending that it's good enough to sell as a live service, while pretending it's still an alpha or beta or whatever. Yeah, exactly. So, but that doesn't mean that the game's still not good, right? Because the thing about this game is that we have territory control, we have castles, we have housing, we have magic, we have taming, we have pets, we've got alchemy, all kind of stuff. Refining and, and mining is its own thing. You have armor crafting, you've got weapon making, you've got bow crafting, you got so many different... The crafting system in this game is something that is to be marveled. It's a masterpiece, and there's so many different websites you can go to actually help you craft the perfect piece of gear. And you need to, because you have a stat system, right? And based on your stats is going to determine, what kind of gear you can use. And everything in the game is built by players. It's a complete... And this is the primary difference between Star Citizen and Mortal Online 2, is that this is a completely 100% player-run economy, right? There is no NPC going into a dungeon and getting elementalism stuff, right? Or mining the stuff to get elementalism stuff to get this. No, players are doing it and putting it on the market, right? So everything in this game is 100% player-made, player-driven. And that's what makes this game, in my opinion, better than Star Citizen, right? Because the player base is what makes the game alive, and it reduces the overall amount of server load that the game has to maintain, which makes the one world scenario possible, right? But that's just one caveat that I'm pointing out. There's multiple factors behind a one world server. But the way that Starvault has approached that is by letting it be completely 100% player-driven, right? So if players didn't inhabit this game, there would be no economy. There would be none of this to buy, right? You have to farm this. So that's what makes this game special, right? And of course, it has the same issues. When it comes to the community, right? Of course, you're gonna have the super toxic people. You're gonna have griefers. You're gonna have, good players, and you're gonna have air quote gray players, like such as myself, who are just like chaotic neutral, you know, 1 second passive and chill, and then, one dude pokes you the wrong way, and then all of a sudden you're a murderous fucking psychopath, right? So, you know, that's what makes the game's, player dynamic so cool, is that you have so many different guilds that have so many different approaches to PvP, right? And this is a primary difference between Star Citizen's community and Mortal's community, is that instead of, trying to sit here and strong arm the company into forcing the game into being, one way or another, right? The player base has decided to say, okay, we are ARPK, which stands for anti-random player killer, and then you have RPK, which is what myself and a lot of other air quote griefers fall into, which is random player killing, right? So because of these different types of PvP mentalities and engagement into games like this, the Star Citizen community hasn't really evolved into this mindset yet. Kind of like a mix between RPK and RPK. Like when it comes to war targets, I tend to like mess with those guys like all the time, right? When they're like in this game yellow or orange characters, they're war targets to your group. So I tend to like fuck with those guys exclusively because they're air quote enemies to our guild, right? But when it comes to like random people, air quote neutrals, or as they're called in Mortal Online, blueberries, because they're blues, I really don't fuck with those people. So I guess normal, I don't know. Like if somebody fucks with me, I fuck with them, right? That's kind of how I approach it. I might not do it right then and there, but I'll get you. Don't worry. So like, yeah, neutral PvP. I don't kill everybody on sight in this game, right? Because like just like in Star Citizen, reputation matters. And then of course you also, unlike in Star Citizen, right? See, we have a crime stat system in Star Citizen, okay? In Mortal Online 2, we do have a crime stat system or a criminal timer system and all that stuff, but we have a murder count system as well, right? So basically, oh yes, Aaron, you can absolutely touch tips with other players in this game, 100%. But anyway, we have murder counts. So basically, if a player murders somebody too many times, or just murders other people too many times, right? They get negative standing, not just with the region they're in, but also with the territory and the town. So basically, if you become red, you lose the ability to use like Preset the Resurrection. You can become targeted by bounty hunters, right? Basically, you're marked all the time. And in town, if you're a red or a murderer and somebody attacks you, right? Guards won't interfere when you attack that player, right? But the catch-22 to that is that if that player is better than you and kills you, then the guards are not going to do anything because you initiated the fight. But if the murderer tries to initiate the fight in town, then the guards will try to kill the red player. So that's how that works. But in Star Citizen, there is no like permanent red system, right? I've seen like other content creators, like Buzzcut Psycho, for example, and others who talk about, a faction system, right? And I don't think that's the right way to go. Like Horde versus Alliance,
Like, maybe if there were aliens, if we had playable aliens in Star Citizen, I could see that being a thing, but the way that mortal system is set up is that, like, if you get too many murders or you have too many murder counts, you become a permanently red player. And I think that should be a thing in Star Citizen. Like, it doesn't even matter what your air quote crime stat is, right? You know, if you're a murderer, right, then you're a fucking murderer. Like, people should be able to kill you. And that should be, like, the punishment, you know, in my mind, when it comes to, like, the way Star Citizen is. So that way, like, everyone can always see that this player is bad. And it's a good way to reflect the reputation system in the game as well. That's just my hot take. You know, that's why I play these other games, to see, like, the way other people look at how they do open world PvP. And I think that CIG could actually learn a thing or two from Starvault when it comes to this topic. And also, the Star Citizen community can definitely take some fucking notes from this community when it comes to the topic of open world PvP, right? Instead of sitting here crying, you know, oh yeah, like there's red towns. Like there are actual player, like, red towns. Like, if you look in the map here, like, all these little blue and yellow dots here, like, these are all, like, player structures, right? All these circles represent the territory that are controlled by castles owned by player guilds, right? And anything within these circles collect taxes from other structures. But anyway, all we're saying is that, you know, there are towns that are specifically designed to harbor and equipped red players anywhere in the map. Just like how an FOB would operate, but in order for this FOB to maintain its ability to exist, is Rion, and you have to literally do the PvE in the game to earn that Rion. Right. You know, that's something, again, this is just, you know, maybe you guys can take that and run with it in your player circles and see if you can get that conversation spinning, because quite honestly, like, you know, I don't think the community is going to listen to me anymore, like, at all. And I really, you know, it is what it is, but I'm still going to put it out there. You'd get more organized PvP, right? You would have a little bit more of a clear objective on who the good and bad guys really are, right? Instead of sitting here wondering, you know, is this guy that I know for a fact is a 100% confirmed dickhead in Star Citizen that is blue at the moment, gonna turn around and A, pad rad me, or B, shoot me as soon as I leave arm stints, or what the fuck ever cancer they choose to impose on a unsuspecting player base, right? And that's the main point that I'm trying to get at. Unsuspecting player base, right? These guys are taking advantage of the player psychology, of the fact that you simply cannot tell what the fuck they're gonna do until they do it, right? So it gives people an ability to, again, like you said, blend into the crowd until they're ready to turn around and AWOX you or whatever, right? Yeah, pretty much, Nathaniel. Yeah. And depending on, you know, how that PvPer is, like if that PvPer only kills red players, then maybe that player should be bright ass fucking green for everyone to see. It's like, this guy is a good guy. He's green on my screen, right? You know, so if a green decides to flip and go air quote cyber psycho, if you will, then yeah, his standing would instantly go back to neutral or red or what the fuck ever numerical system, which is what I'm putting up in front of your screen right now, would represent, right? And the way that it works, again, in this game, is that for every murder count you get, you have a timer associated with that murder count, right? So basically, it takes X amount of time for a murder count to go away from your record, right? So basically, you can set that timer for anywhere for like, 1 kill equals 3 hours or 4 hours, 5 hours, whatever. Enter arbitrary number, right? Right. And then, yeah, so then you have your standings as well, right? So, like, since I've been a good boy in the Curite regions, I've got good standing, right? But since I've been a bad boy over here and I've been griefing the griefers, right? Being the shithead to kill their shitheads, what it means to be renegade, right? Bad guys to kill bad guys. I have low standing here, right? And this is the consequence, right? When it comes to dealing with these types of players, is that they're always going to find a way to min-max this system. But anyway, that's just a couple of things that... Well, wait, it's not just a sense of security, but it's a sense of awareness, right? Like, you're fairly certain this player's not gonna do some bullshit, right? It's not 100%. Nothing's ever guaranteed, right? But at the same time, it gives you a little bit of a peace of mind that, you're around a player who's not morally ambiguous. Exactly, right? Oh no, I have a macro in the background for this because I don't want to sit here and keep pushing one over and over again. Yeah, yellow and orange, I think are really good war target colors. It's like, what, like an hour An hour for each one, Zisto, right? Yeah, 2 hours. Yeah, 100%. I just haven't had the time to set up my reshade on this computer yet. Like I just got it working a few days ago. Actually, Ziso and his dad helped me fix it. This game is called Mortal Online 2. It's a PvP survival game. Right now I am training my Mage craft. It's taken me many moons. I know we're getting there, right? No, it's for each successful cast is what levels up the skill. So like if I were to go to magic schools,
See, we're leveling up this skill right here. See, as you can see, if you just saw that, for each cast, it levels up. Maybe I wasn't paying attention to the numbers, but a good bit. Yeah, this is the TLDR of Mortal Online 2 is this, boys. This is the game that Elder Scrolls Online should have always been. Alright? It doesn't have as much of the, you know, high fantasy that the Elder Scrolls has, but... Oh no, it's definitely the Morrowind music I have playing on a YouTube in the background. Yeah, Morrowind slaps. Even after, what, it's been a legit... Oh wow, it's been 21 years, I guess. Well, I mean, not exactly 21 years, but by the calendar date, you know, 21 years since Morrowind has been released. Yeah, I'll show you guys some more spells. Okay, I'll do that in a second, Zisto, don't worry. There's an ice ball there. It's called Comet, but it's basically ice ball. Grady. Okay. Now, for my first trick, we're gonna make water wetter. And then, we're gonna make it cold. And then we're gonna try to go for the third. Nope. Okay, fuck it. We'll just give it some lightning. So yeah, I have... Let's see, can I do anything else? I can cast that. Okay. The mat for this particular spell is quite expensive, but I do need to level it up a little bit higher before I try to keep doing the other spell. I don't know. Do I have any more? I do. Let me get my mana back and I'll try that, Ziso. Yeah, we'll try it. And that might actually work. Alright, let's give it a go. Alright, got it off in the first cast. I mean, it could very well work. So, yeah, that would be the combo, right? You would cast the water spell. And what this will do is it'll get everyone around wet. And then what you do next, obviously, is you cast the cold spell. But when you cast the cold spell with everyone wet, it's going to start damaging them. So when you're in town, you know, the guards will start attacking you. So I can get this spell, if I can get this spell off here. Alright, now I get the water spell back up. And then we hit the wind. So theoretically that should slap right there. But if you're doing that in town, you would have to have a second mage to cast either the cold or the wind spell. I mean, water lightning's easy, right? You know. Yeah, we're trying to figure out how to cast Blizzard over here, man. Fuck that easy shit. Like, every fucking low-level mage can cast Storm. Pfft, get out of here. I mean, come on. Yeah. See, earlier tonight when I was testing out these combos, I actually killed 5 people in the dueling arena over on the other side of town. It was quite funny. Alright, so I'm out of wind. Dude, that's what I said, Nathaniel! That's exactly what I said. So basically what you would do at that point is you would have to have 3 mages pull this off. In town, at least. You would throw down the lava ground or whatever it's called. Then you put the firewall down. And then you put the wind barrier on top of that, and what happens is that everything in the middle is on fire and melting, and everything trying to run outside is getting hit with wind and fire. It's called Mortal Online 2, Rex. I should probably change that in the description. Nah, too lazy. What am I? Some kind of professional streamer?
Yeah, well, on the 10,000th or 20,000th cast, it starts to get kind of annoying when you hear that fail effect. No, just cast, damn you! Aha! A double cast. I mean, yeah, there's a whole bunch of spells I could do, but I just gotta have the mats for them. I just don't carry them all on me because it would actually over encumber you to carry all the mats for all the spells. So I guess the best thing to do would be to find, you know, either the combos that you like to use, or if you're going into a particular dungeon or, you know, fight, you would use, as you know, a specific set of spells. Like you wouldn't use fire against fire, you know, monsters or whatever, or elementals. That would just be silly. Well, in a sense, all the NPCs that you ever encounter in a video game are air quote brain dead when you learn, you know, how to fight them, right? Or handle them. But the NPCs in this game, I would argue, are a lot more deadly, right? When you're fighting level 1 zombies, if you will, right? Per se, level 1 zombies, and what this game is. Their attack movements are slow and predictable, right? But as you scale up in different enemies or stronger enemies in the game, their attacks become more complex and quicker. And if you don't know how to parry and dodge correctly in this game, then 2 bandits will clap your ass in 5 seconds. Right? And everybody in the game goes through this learning curve, right? Of how to handle different enemies, because in a sense every enemy has a different moveset, and over time you just learn how each enemy fights like any other fighting game, and then you develop your character around how you fight them. So like if you're a melee guy, then obviously you would use whatever weapon you want to use and get good at it. If you're a mage, then you're going to hit them at distance. If you're an archer, you're going to hit them at distance, right? So, depending on how you want to engage a target, kind of will determine what kind of character you ultimately roll, based, like, you know, the elf in this game, if you will, can move faster, right? And has a bonus for, or a strength bonus, if you will, for bows. So they can use higher level bows or higher strength level bows with lower strength, if you want to be that kind of a player. And then of course, if you want to be just a mage, purely a mage that hits as hard as you can, we call those wheelchair mages, and you sit on a mount, you know, and just cast spells. But the problem with that mage is that you can't be an elementalist on horseback, right? So, in order to use elementalism, you have to be a foot fighter, and that limits the amount of damage you can do, ultimately, because you're having to shuffle more of those points into mobility. And, you know, that's essentially how the game goes, right? There's always going to be the preferred way to fight an enemy in this game, right? Something that's usually, that has high hit points and has high strength, like a Tegmaton, for example. You wouldn't melee that, right? You would have to be a mounted archer or a mounted mage to fight that. Same thing with a troll. Like, you're never gonna see a melee Chad run up on a troll, right? And melee him down, right? That ain't gonna happen. Like, you know, same thing with the Spider Queen, right? It takes like a lot of people to take down these really big ass fucking boss or mini boss kind of, you know, enemies. So, you know, all the combat types have a place in the PvE and PvP tree, and there's no way for a particular class to be good at everything in the game, and that's what makes it an MMO, right? You have to get the assistance of a melee Chad or a mounted archer or, you know, a paladin like myself in order to do things, right? I call myself a paladin because I use magic and I use swords and armor and stuff, so, I mean, classic paladin. Or knight, whatever. Spell sword. There's also necromancy in this game as well. You can be a death knight. Oh, the current meta? Mounted archer death knight. That's the current meta, Nathaniel.
I see a lot of people using necromancy to get around having to use pet points and shit. We call them Death Knights. No. There are any wipes. I mean, in the past, I've argued for a wipe because of certain situations, but at this point, and the way that Star Vault has their particular business model, it wouldn't be. There wouldn't be a reason to wipe, or it wouldn't be financially sound for them to wipe. It'd piss too many people off. Like once you get super invested into something like this, and you put all that work in, and yeah, you just can't wipe at that point. Yeah, that's pretty much the TLDR. I was a little salty about that, as you could possibly imagine how salty I could be about a topic such as hot. Like, yeah, I was pretty fucking mad. I ain't gonna lie. Like, when there's confirmed like millions of gold duped in the game, and speed hackers, and literally glitching the bosses, every boss in the game. It invalidated any type of legitimate gameplay at all, in any capacity. So in my opinion, it invalidated every single keep, every single stronghold, every single house. Everything was invalid in my mind when you have something that, you know, impacting on the game's economy and environment. But Star Vault disagreed, and, you know, they didn't wipe the game, but, you know, it is what it is. You see the dupe or the bug that Ziso's talking about right now is very much akin to the invisibility bug in Star Citizen, right? You see, like all the top players knew about it, and they actively used it every day, and they never fucking told anybody at Star Vault about it, right? Until somebody figured it out, and all hell broke loose. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is, like, it's just another example of how, you know, things like exploits and bugs this dire affecting the game's environment is super fucking detrimental, not just to the game's health, but to the overall community's health as well. Because it breeds distrust not just in the community, but it breeds distrust with the company itself, right? And, you know, like I said, there's so many things that Star Vault and CIG have in common. I mean, they should really date, honestly. But yeah, I don't know if you guys can see it, but yeah, it's Unreal 5 DX12. I don't have the super fancy NVIDIA shit, but I do have the AMD equivalency turned on. Everything's on high settings, you know, running at 2K, 60 frames. Looks beautiful. It's gorgeous. Oh, I'm gonna sit here and go on about this forever. But like another thing that Star Citizen and Mortal have in common is that annoying fucking hitching, right? Like when the game starts loading all those textures and all that other shit in the background, right? And you get that annoying frame or stutter or just flat out freeze. Man, like both games are fucking notorious for that shit, right? And the difference between this game and Star Citizen is that you only really notice that in the populated cities like Tindrum or fucking Meduli, Bhakti, right? Probably up north now considering how much it's blown up. I mean, you have task givers in the game that act like air quote quest givers, right, for PvE content. But it's most players when they figure out like what they'd like to do and what makes money for them, you know, just like in any other game like this in Star Citizen, they just structure their gameplay loops around, you know, that particular thing that makes them the most money based on the skills they have. And, you know, that's essentially the center of it all. And then the PvP is just either A, competition, or B, just, you know, general trolling. Like, once you get used to, you know, the idea of losing all of your equipment or gear when you die, right? You know, it becomes harder for players like that to grief you out of the game if you just, you know, don't care about that kind of shit. Gotta be careful for them trolls. Because they might jump into your AoE. And if they jump into your AoE and take damage while you're doing stuff like this, then the guards will come and they will clap you. And you will lose all your stuff. Speaking of which, I need more mats anyway. Yes, I have been found. Oh, there's sea dude under the water. Yoink. So this quaint little shithole is called Maduli. We call it Madudu. Hey, don't bother calling PETA, they're not gonna give a fuck. Recently known as the C1 Destroyer. That guy was so fucking mad, bro. Like, you know, I don't know, man. There's just some people. Excellent. So, actually, last week, I think it was like Wednesday or Thursday, we were in, actually, it was the day I made my ghost video, if you watched that, Nathaniel, with the new stealth with the ghost. Earlier that night, or actually later that night, we were in free flight, you know, just normal free flight, in the normal, air quote, unified flight model free flight, and we were dicking around, you know, killing each other, and this C1 spawned in, and, you know, we started shooting at it. So, you know, we popped the C1 because we wanted to see how long it was going to take to kill the C1, right? And it took a good 45 seconds to pop that damn thing, right? So, he came in chat and just went absolutely apeshit ballistic, right? And I said in chat, hey man, We just wanted to see the TTK of your ship. I'm sorry, we won't bug you anymore. And he just kept going on and on and on in chat. And then Ziso popped off and just said, man, I don't give a fuck about you. I don't give a fuck about your stupid ass game. I don't give a fuck about this shit. This is dumb. All of it's dumb. And fucking dude rage quit the lobby. So that's the story. And apparently he called his boyfriend and he came in there with a fucking, what's it called? Sentinel, right? And I think I went like 5 or 6 rounds with him. And he kept EMPing me, so it really wasn't much of a fight. But still, for me it was fun. But for the C1, not so much. So, his reasoning for coming into Free Flight was he wanted to set up his controls. So, in my mind, you don't go into a public lobby to set up your fucking joysticks. You go into a private lobby to set up your joysticks. Because if you are attacked by people like Renegade, right, then how do you plan to defend yourself if your sticks aren't fucking set up? Right? So why the fuck are you in a fucking public lobby with nothing set up? So that's completely on him. I mean, Ziso is kind of mean, but I'm just saying. Exactly, Nathaniel. That's why I really don't feel bad for him, right? At first I felt bad, but then when he said that, I didn't feel bad at all. And that's why I didn't discipline my first captain here for his behavior, because it was correct. Fuck that guy. He was a crybaby. So, you know. Yeah, you always go into Free Flight nowadays with your boys. You never go into Free Flight solo anymore. You just don't fucking do it. I mean, I wish that it could be the other way. I really do, truly. But you know, if people are gonna be that way, then you know, fuck it. You know, you might as well be Han Solo and shoot first, right? Fuck that noise. You're the one with the Killock soundboard. Oh, bro, I get fucking... Dude, I got Eiffel Towered by fucking... by Shadow Moses and Master Mode Squadron Battle when it first dropped. And then that goddamn Sentinel fucking fucked me. And then the other night, when I was flying with Imperium, Griefernet fucking dicked us all down with that goddamn stealth meta. Right? I mean, fuck. no one wins all the time in Star Citizen. You know, and I really blame Death of a Spaceman on this cancerous, I gotta win 24/7 mentality. I mean, no, seriously, like, yeah. Yeah, you know, I really have mixed feelings on the stealth mechanic. I really like the idea of what it is, but I just feel with the way that IFCS is right now, that the stealth is overtuned. But if you're tuning that for master modes, it's fine where it is. Oh man, that ghost is it's a complete game changer, man. Like, you know, it shouldn't be like looked at like as a long-term meta, but for the moment in time, it's just really strong. Like I was like at the very end, like I was saying, it's like if you know how to properly engage, like merge on your target and disengage, like you can be an absolute fucking menace. And you can also combine that with changing the missile racks on the Ghost for single size 2 EM missile dominators. Yeah, just like, yeah, you already know exactly. Like you can shoot, you can put 2 dominators on somebody without them even knowing where the fuck you are, right? It's really, like I said, it's really strong right now, and you know, I just feel it's because of the way that IFCS is in the current flight model. You know, even all these guys on Twitter, like all the other content creators that are bitching about backstrafe, like, you know, I know they're not going to listen to what I have to say when I say this, but you know, that's been in ever since the beginning of this current flight model. Okay, like, people just argued against backstrafe because they didn't want you to do it against them, right? There's no reason to whine about backstrafe in this flight model. If people are gonna argue in the defense of this flight model, then they can't argue against backstrafe, right? Because it's part of the unified flight model. That's what it is. 6 degrees of freedom, all axis, unlimited thrust. Now, you could tune the backstrafe to have slower acceleration than forward thrust to simulate what master modes is, which is essentially what these people are trying to push for, right? But the problem is that you're still going to have the maximum speed of IFCS in this flight model. So, trying to sit here and cry for lower speeds in this flight model while arguing for higher speeds in master modes, in my mind, really goes to show the hypocrisy of the Ace Combat community in Star Citizen at the moment, right? And I can't think of any nicer way or more articulate way to say that. You know, these guys, they really just... they just don't like the change. I mean, but that's just on the actual the flight model argument, right? What these other guys are not taking into account is the actual performance of the game itself, and how this and the performance of the server itself, right? Slowing down the flight model is a really good step of making the game more stable, because you most certainly can't have a worldwide server with everyone zipping around like a goddamn Gundam. I mean, you clearly see, or if anyone did watch my duels with Snyder that I posted on YouTube like a couple weeks ago, there was an instance when, you know, we had to stop the fights because his client started to lag so bad and desynchronize so bad that he was literally bouncing all across my screen and I could not track him. Right? You can't have that and in a worldwide server and expect to say that it's fair, balanced, and competitive. So, and that was in master modes too, which really sucks, and that's scary, since, you know, we're talking about slowing the flight model down, and you still see those problems in master modes. Is, you know, kind of not a good sign. I'm really hoping that's just, you know, bad netcode, as they would say back in 2015, right? Because that was the excuse back in the day, was netcode, if you will. Well, I don't. I think it's unfair to say they don't know what they're talking about in every single subject matter of the game. But when it comes to like the really in-depth knowledge of it, I don't think they know what they're talking about. No, absolutely. And it's because, you know, a lot of these guys, they're new. And I say that respectfully. Like, I really do. Like, they just haven't been around long enough or even care to go back into the history and look into it, right? So, but I feel if they did, they would probably have somewhat of an understanding. But even if they did go back and look at the history, I feel they wouldn't even have the bigger picture because they didn't experience it. And then, of course, you're going to have this skewedness of, you know, everyone telling their side of the story. Which is kind of bullshit, in my opinion, because, you know, everyone has their YouTube channels that clearly show what the fucking story is. You know, trying to rewrite that fucking history annoys the shit out of me. And those people know who the hell they are. Well, again, why, you know, this is something I've said. Well, I mean, like, we had the Chief Goalie tutorial way back in the day, but ever since Chief Goalie was removed and the Arena Commander tutorial was put on ice, you know, we haven't heard a word about it in literal years. And the excuse is, you know, why make a tutorial for a game that's ever changing? And that's as true for CIG as it is for the community, right? You know, think of how many times over the years, you know, especially when it comes to combat in particular, right? You know, the olden days of 11th Hour and Legacy Fleet, Nubifier, you know, Renegade, right? All of us had our own flight fucking, you know, videos and tutorials and guides. And over the years, the same people are doing the same guides under different logos and names for whatever reason. And they always have to wind up doing it over again. Right? Because the meta, if you will, is always changing, or the game is always changing. So you have content creators that have decided to monetize the change by continuously making that content over and over again. And then you have the catch-22 of that, of you're teaching everybody that's playing the game stuff that they're ultimately, at the end of the day, going to either have to unlearn or not use because it's not viable to use in the game anymore because of the changes they do to it. Right? So, if there was a tutorial to be had in Star Citizen, the only tutorial that needs to be given is how to set your controls up properly. Right? Because that's where the logic leads at the end of this, is that once people understand how to set their controls up properly, you know, everything else becomes just figuring out what you can do in the sandbox. So some guys, like I said, some guys out there have made tutorials on how to set their controls up properly for, like, mouse and keyboard, for example, right? You know, the the most common setup in the game. Oh yeah, man. Like, so again, if the old tutorial had any value in it, it was a good way to help players set their controls up. Like, have an exercise to do, make sure your controls are set up, and when you're done or have completed that set exercise, you can move on to the next one and keep dialing in your controls and, you know, have an explanation as to what each slider does and, you know, what each axis is. I mean, because that's essentially what flight training is. Because it doesn't matter what setup somebody's using. At the end of the day, everyone's putting in the same input to do the same thing. It's just, it's harder to do on some others than other setups. Yeah, they have a couple other guys on YouTube that have talked about how the UI needs to be better. I like that. I like the new Mech Warrior aesthetic, but we need better indicators and such. Yeah, that is also annoying. You know, another thing about the other content creators is, like, you know, a lot of them, and then, you know, I don't mean this mean, I really don't, but, you know, they have a lot invested into their channels. They have a lot invested into all the stuff that they do. So when all this drastic change or, you know, upheaval happens, it's really hard for those guys to, you know, kind of incorporate that into what they're doing, because all of them in their own way are trying to stay on CIG's good boy list in one way or another, and it's a hard balance for them, you know, to acknowledge all the fucked up shit that's going on in and around CIG and Star Citizen, but at the same time maintain their audiences and maintain, quite frankly, their source of income. So I don't envy them for having to do that, but that's a consequence of having to rely on your internet platforms to sustain your way of life. Basically, it's a long-winded way of me saying I understand up to a point. There's still going to be some value in the 45. It's just that you're going to have to incorporate a little bit of roll into the direction you 45. That's it. See, the thing is that you didn't have to roll that much. But now you do. Yeah, pre-nosing, you know, G-safe off, for example. You know, one of the tricks that we use is when you boost, you have G-safe on-off toggle on your boost button. So when your boost is on, G-safe turns off, and the same thing can be true for your fire button as well, right? ESP only turns on when you start firing your guns, right? And ESP turns off when you let go of your trigger. And these two little things will give you a tremendous advantage in being able to keep your nose on target. Oh, yeah, I know, Ziso. You're an advanced student. Yes. Yeah, that one kind of went around pretty fast. But if you haven't noticed, in master modes, you can black out without having to boost, and you might as well have G-safe off when you're boosting if that's the case. Well, right, because, you know, like, who's the air quote authority in this community? Like, who, you know, you can look at the usual suspects, right? But nobody is like the ultimate authority when it comes to this topic in the community. Like, I don't give a fuck who they think they are. No one is. Right? And because of that, nobody knows definitively where to go and look for this information, Nathaniel. You are correct. Yes. And that is why we need a flight tutorial in Star Citizen. not to teach people how to fly, but to teach people the functionality of the systems in which they are using, so that they can better understand how to learn to play the game, instead of sitting here trying to sit what some have called esoteric or niche knowledge. Right? People just don't understand the gameplay systems and the flight systems in which they are using. And which again falls into the category of why do a tutorial if it's just going to change, right? Correct. The reason, again, that it's so effective is because the ESP algorithm isn't taking into account the additional thrust that is happening when you do the trichord. So basically, you're just circumventing ESP when you use that exploit. Which is why people have been giving bad feedback, in my opinion, on flight, because you're sitting here, or they are, whoever, whatever verb, pronoun, whatever you want to use, are sitting here using this, thinking that this is the way to evade fire in the game, when in reality, all they're doing is circumventing another gameplay system. And when people are not tricording or pip wiggling, then you notice that people are getting more consistent hits on each other if they're able to merge and maintain their nose on target. And the only way to evade fire without tricording is to disengage from your target. Right? We see this in master modes. And because we see this in master modes, tells me that it's the intended way to play the game. Right? Based on the way that everything works. When you're not inducing some kind of cheesy ass method to break the game's assisted aim, you have people complaining that they need more speed because they can't evade fire, right? And because they can't evade fire, they feel they need more speed because they can't tricord their way out of it. When the answer has been, for literally the last 6 years, to be nice, is to get rid of the overpowered nature of ESP, auto gimbal, assisted aim, auto aim, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Reduce the IFC speeds down to the way they used to be 7-8 years ago, and reduce the amount of assisted aim that ESP offers, allowing players to get into more meaningful engagements. But the problem is transferring in and out of, air quote, SCM mode to, air quote, nav mode, which is a fancy way of saying cruise mode, because that's essentially what it is. But the difference between nav mode and cruise mode is nav mode drops your shields, whereas cruise mode did not drop your shields. I know I'm going way back in time here, but you're going to have to follow me a bit. Cruise mode was introduced in the Persistent Universe as a means to travel around quicker. And people complained about people dogfighting in cruise mode all the time. So basically, CIG introduced what is the current flight model today, known as the Unified Flight Model, which allows you to go into cruise modes and dogfight. So basically, what I'm saying is that over the years is that, CIG has tried different things by listening to the community, but the problem is that, in my opinion, they listen to the wrong people because of a derangement syndrome, not just against RS, but other combat orgs in the game as well, because these particular groups of players, known as the Care Bear, feel that we had a bias against the overall, health of the game, the overall scope of the game, the overall ambition of the game, because we only cared about dogfighting, right? And only because we cared about dogfighting in PvP is the reason why we shouldn't have been listened to, right? And CIG, wrongfully agreed with them, and now here we are, and we're having to literally erase the last 7 years and go back to the flight model that actually retained player engagement, not just in Arena Commander, but the persistent universe as well. And all these guys, like I said, in the content creation realm, are very much aware of this, and they just don't want to. They just don't want to admit that this is the history of the game, and this pissing match between a bunch of whiny Care Bears and PvPers is essentially why we're here today. And in some cases, I believe that the PvE crowd was correct in assuming that there were people, that had their own, and they were looking out for themselves and only themselves, right? But I think that now they've learned that it wasn't groups like mine or others, that they see the groups now that wanted to bend the will of the company by any means necessary, either by using outlandish tactics in game to make you rage on Spectrum or Reddit, or by getting a massive following of dogfighters, for example, and ensuring that the Arrow stays on top of the air quote meta for the last 5 fucking years, while every other ship in the game gets left in the dust, right? I'm not trying to point any fingers here or anything, but when you look at the series of events over the last 5 years, it's pretty fucking hard to argue against what I'm laying down right now, Nathaniel, you would think so, but another thing that the player base doesn't want to admit, especially CIG, everyone loves to sit there and be like, 5 million players, Star Citizen has 5 million players. No, Star Citizen has 5 million accounts registered on RSI, not 5 million players. Full stop. Full stop, full break. Let's just stop the nonsense right now. There's only maybe 20,000 active players in Star Citizen, and their player population has dwindled down to only the sweat lords and only the diehards, right, Nathaniel? Right? You don't see a lot of air quote new players in Star Citizen, do you? Right? When was the last time you've gone into a server in Star Citizen and actually seen a air quote new player? I'll wait. I'll think about that for a second. Like how long? Right? And that's my point. And because of that fact, it is more common to run into these players because not only do they go out of their way to make sure that they're on each other's friends list, doesn't matter how many times you clear it off, right? You know, you're always going to be in a network of metagaming that's going to have a chain or logistics chain, if you will. You see what I'm saying? To get to where you're at. So that, and then of course with the server count being so low, and with there only being one fucking star system, of course you're going to see the same people over and over and over again every day, right? You know, you might see a lot of alt accounts, right? You see my alt account, Renegade Pilot, right? And I'm open about that because my main account is my fucking big ship account and my alt account is my dogfighter account, right? So I admit and openly admit to having 2 active accounts in Star Citizen, right? But what about the other 4 accounts that I have forgotten the fucking emails to, right? That I can't get access to anymore, right? So that would mean Defanos has 6 accounts, 2 of which he has access to, right? Because he's a stoner and can't remember access to the other fucking 4 accounts, which thankfully have nothing on them. But do you see my point, right? So when you have that, when you actually say to yourself, let's take out calculator here, right? Let's just type in calculator and just type in 20,000, right? And we're going to multiply that by 6. That's 120,000 accounts, right? So that's just one example. So if you were to say every single person has an alt account in Star Citizen, right? That would mean that the reality is that there's only 2,500,000 Star Citizens, and that's just being fucking nice. Okay? We all know the reality that number is much lower, right? And when you take it into account all the whale backers in the past that have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in this game, right? And had to have multiple accounts because their hangars actually hit a limit, right? And you can actually go back and actually look at Ben Lesnick's history on that in the old forums. So when you have whale backers that have 10 or 15 accounts, right? So if you have 10,000 original backers, whale backers that have 10 accounts, you multiply that by 10 and voila, that's another 100,000 fucking accounts, right? So, you know, all I'm trying to say is that at best, the game has 2 million players. At best. Not 5 million, 2 million. Let's be real. Let's be honest. Let's grow the fuck up, right? Stop being retarded about this. What name? Ben Lesnick? Ben space Lisnick, I think. But you can look him up on Twitter. Ben Lesnick. You know, he's one of the older people. Travis Day was one of the older people, but I honestly I can't remember, but I think he tragically lost his life somehow. I don't remember any other ones that would still be there right now that are from the original days outside of Tony Zurovic and Son Tracy, obviously Jared,
Chris and Sandy. I don't know if Calyx is still there. I haven't heard from Calyx in a long time. I don't know if he's still there. Probably not. But you know, there's only 5 people off the top of my head that I know that are still at CIG that have been there since the beginning. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah. Yeah, and that's, you know, again, I'm being nice. I really am. Like if we really did know the real number, it would probably be right at 2 million. So yeah, when I see all these people doing all these posts of, hey, look at CIG's latest fucking achievement. Either A, they just don't know that, you know, that number is not right, or they're actively playing into the metrics, the false metrics narrative, just to throw their hat in the ring to see if Senpai CIG will notice them, right? You know, I tend to think that most people are smart enough to know this shit without me having to explain it to them on fucking YouTube or Twitch. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I know, right? Getting there. And you know, I may know a little bit more than the average Star Citizen backer, but I don't know everything. I want a lodestone powder.
Oh, but basically enough. And now that rant that I just hope CIG realizes that, at this point, all the disingenuous people that I have tried to articulate and point out to you right now, are clearly trying to keep dogfighting at the highest speeds possible. Because there's a lot of reasons to be afraid of the lower speed flight model. And it brings me to like my final thoughts on kind of everything, which is, Star Citizen is supposed to be a team-based game. It's supposed to be an MMO, and just like in Mortal and just like in other games, there's classes, there's roles to fill, and there's play styles that go along with these methods of gameplay, and there is no one-size-fits-all method when it comes to games like this. Because if there was, then everyone would do the same thing, right? And if everyone's doing the same thing, then where's the variety in that? And if there's no variety and everyone's doing the same thing, then how can that be an MMO? The only thing that makes it massively multiplayer is the amount of players in the game at that point. So, again, when we're looking at and listening to these other content creators and other people, we just need to keep in mind that, yes, everyone's feedback is valid and everyone's opinion should be listened to and considered at the very minimum. But also, people need to keep in mind and consider, is this person's feedback biased or skewed to trying to push one thing or another, right? And why? Because at the end of the day, everyone has a bias, right? But identifying why this person has a bias, I think, is crucial to when we listen to somebody's feedback. Even my own, especially my own, right? So, anyway, that's just how I feel about the whole thing. And, maybe when enough of the game shits together, I'll actually dedicate time to it like I did in the past. But, right now I just don't see a reason to dedicate in Sweatlord into anything like these games, because they're just not completed games, so fuck it, right? Besides, it's someone else's fucking turn to have their spot in the sun, man. I really think that the age of the older backers needs to come to an end. I mean, goddamn, the community says it best. We're in our fucking mid and high 30s. Right? The shit that most of us are talking about is 5, 7, 10 years old at this point, so. You can still be a legend and not be in the limelight, my friend, right? I don't feel that in order to maintain a legend status that you have to be in the spotlight 24/7. At least that's how I feel, right? What's that old saying? No king rules forever. Well, I mean, I appreciate that. I mean, but I mean, we do have air quote a say, I guess, but you know, it's not as much as you think, or some others would like to imply that we have. I would say that, you know, we are listened to with more of a, I don't know. I don't want to say it's not definitely not first. We're not listened to first. We're not listened to like exclusively. God no, it's like. But I do think that CIG considers what their older backers have to say more seriously than some of their newer backers. Right? I mean, you wouldn't listen to, like, you know, a bartender, for example, when it comes to making, you know, an engineering decision, right? But on that same token, a car manufacturer would begrudgingly listen to a race car driver because the race car driver just simply knows what he's talking about, right? So that's kind of another way to put it, right? You know, yeah. Well, that's the problem, is that, you know, Star Citizen can be both, right? You know, Star Citizen, it does have the ability to be both. Like, if Arena Commander had a proper fucking team, and I'm not trying to shit on on DJ or the current team right now, but if Arena Commander had the proper support that it's always needed, instead of being thrown to the fucking wayside for the sake of selling some stupid goddamn alien ship, right? Then the game would be in a better spot, because if you have a part of the game that is reliable and has something there for players to come back to, whether it be like some type of stupid little reward or some kind of seasonal thing or whatever, right? Not some stupid ass fucking forum badge. I'm talking about something like actually that reflects on your personal like player card, or something that reflects on, you know, somewhere in the game, whether it be like, you know, hangar flare or what have you, you know, a reason for people to participate in Star Marine and fucking fucking Arena Commander, right? You know, actually have like meaningful rewards for doing racing. It doesn't matter where a player positions on the leaderboard. I mean, of course, people that get up there in the top 10 should be rewarded for that, right? Not just getting number 1 spot, but in the top 10, whatever, however they want to do it. It's just an idea to not make it super toxic, but you gotta have the game types. You gotta have the player base that's willing to engage in those game types. You know, tanks and all this other stuff they have are great starts, but with how jank things are, it's hard to get people to want to get into tanks, right? Well, that's the thing I was fixing to get into, which is Theaters of War, right? Theaters of War would have turned the game straight into Call of Duty, right? And personally, I don't have a problem with that, you know, because game types are nothing more than rules that are set in an environment that the game is in, right? So if you modify those rules to be like Call of Duty or Battlefield, for example, then why the fuck not? But you know, but the problem is that the UI is completely horrendous. Not just for multi-crew, but for Star Marine as well when it comes to loadouts, right? And players can't save different loadouts like you can in what, Battlefield and Call of Duty. So like when people ask for this stuff, they're not like really considering what is required for that to work, you know? And then of course when you're talking about Arena Commander, you know, there are things you can do with that, but not as much as you can do with Theaters of War. So the module system has been a complete fucking wreck, just an absolute train wreck. The wreck system, all this stuff, like it's rickety, and it only exists because of the contractual obligations that come along with being a subscriber with REC, for example. And the system that they have in place really hasn't been refined to reflect that and to maintain that, right? When you're talking about changing the UI to be compatible with an idea like Battlefield or Call of Duty, it requires them to go into the back end of the website as well. Like, that's how far they have to go into this, because they've tied Spectrum in with Star Citizen. So CIG have made some really, really dumb decisions over the years, and I'm just trying to like articulate it as best I can to y'all, to kind of like, you know, show you or kind of give you an idea of just how fucked up things have become and why it's so hard for them to make these changes in the game, right? To bring it into line with a Battlefield or
Call of Duty standard. It can be done. All I'm saying is like I do see that that the game can be saved. Clearly, it can be reworked into something that's appealing for the average consumer. But it's gonna like CIG is gonna have to sacrifice something in order to do it, and in order to do, like, it would mean for them they would have to back out on the promises they've made over the years. In order to actually make Star Citizen work properly, they would have to back out on a great many promises they've made. And I just feel that just like with everything that's been happening in real life in the last 5 years, is that like these people are not going to do the right thing until they're absolutely fucking made to do so. And I don't know what's gonna make CIG do right. And Squadron 42 is obviously the priority, but I think that the persistent universe should just be put on fucking hold until they can get Pyro and the jump points ready. Like, that should be number one priority, is jump point and Pyro. That should be the first priority. So when I look on leaks and I see that they've moved base building up, and that tells me that they've moved base building up and they've moved jump points and Pyro back again. That's what that tells me, because we still haven't heard any fucking thing about that. So the company's still bobbing and weaving and trying to, skate past all these things, but 2024, I think, is going to be the year of put up or fucking shut up. And if CIG doesn't deliver, something that will retain player engagement for more than a few hours of the same day the patch drops, and I literally fucking mean that, then there's no hope for Star Citizen. Right? And like I said, the persistent universe needs to be put on hold until they get Star Marine fixed, Arena Commander fixed, Master Modes completed, and then go back to the fucking persistent universe and stop this nonsense of Pyros just around the corner, soon TM bullshit. This is the fourth year? Is it the third year or the fourth year that this fucking shit's been delayed? Right? So, anyway, I'm done ranting about that. Really, I'm done ranting about Star Citizen.
I mean, they clearly bit off more than they can chew, right? And all this nonsense that we're having to endure as a community is really about this company saving face as best they can. That's a big number right there. Arrangement 50. That's the halfway point. And another 10 levels, should be able to start casting lightning fields.
Yeah, man. I'll see you around. I'm actually gonna get off here in a few minutes. I gotta go to work later. Time does fly when you play this game. Alright, guys. I appreciate y'all stopping by and listening to me rant like a fucking madman for the last couple hours. I'm gonna go ahead and get off of this and head to bed. Gotta go to work later.